She showed up when the sun was sinking low, turning the Nebraska sky orange and gold. I was out by the fence, hands dirty, sweat running down my back, fixing a loose wire that the wind never seemed to respect. When I heard tires crunch on the gravel road, I knew it was not just another neighbor passing through. I looked up and saw her car stop at the end of my driveway. Emma stepped out slowly, like she was not sure she should be here. She held her bag close to her side, shoulders tight, eyes tired in a way that told a long story without words. For a moment she just stood there, the wind tugging at her hair, the open land stretching endlessly behind her. Then she walked toward me. "Daniel," she said softly, stopping a few steps away. Her voice shook, just a little. "My dad said you need a wife." The words hit me harder than the hammer ever could. I leaned the shovel against the fence and straightened up, trying to understand what I had just heard. Before I could say anything, she kept talking, like she was afraid silence would make her turn around and leave. "I lost my job," she said. "I have to leave my place by next week. I can't go back to Omaha. I don't belong there anymore." She finally looked at me then, her eyes glossy. "If you need help here, I can work. I won't be a burden. I just need somewhere to stay." The wind moved through the tall grass around us, whispering like it always did. I felt something old and heavy stir in my chest. "My name is Daniel Foster. I'm 26 years old and I own a small farm outside Scottsbluff, Nebraska. 6 years ago, my parents died in a car accident, and overnight, this land became my whole life. The house, the fields, the weight of keeping everything from falling apart." Emma knew that story. Everyone in town did. Her father, Albert, had helped me survive those early years. He taught me how to fight quietly, how to keep my ground when people tried to take advantage of grief. And now he was gone too. I studied Emma's face. The fear, the pride, the hope she was trying not to show. I saw myself in her more than I wanted to admit. "This wouldn't be charity," I said slowly. "If you stay as part of this place. You'd have your own space, your own say." She swallowed hard. "I don't need romance. I just need a chance." The words felt too familiar, like something I had once whispered to the empty house late at night. I nodded before I could overthink it. "Then stay here," I said, "with me." Her breath caught. For a second she looked like she might cry. Instead she nodded, once, like she was afraid she'd break if she did more. 2 days later, we stood in a small white church at the edge of town. It was quiet. Too quiet for something people usually celebrate. A few neighbors sat in the back. Pastor Tom stood at the front with a gentle smile. I wore my father's old suit. Emma wore a simple blue dress she had borrowed from a friend. When I slid my mother's old silver ring onto her finger, my hand shook. Not because I was unsure, but because I felt the weight of what we were doing. This wasn't love. Not yet. It was survival. Trust. Two lonely people, choosing not to face the world alone. After the ceremony, we ate sandwiches at the kitchen table. The sunlight came in soft through the window. We barely spoke, but the silence felt calm, not empty. "I can sleep in the spare room," Emma said carefully. "There's no rush," I replied. "We'll figure things out as we go." And we did. Days turned into routine. She worked in the garden. I worked the fields. At night, we shared meals and quiet conversations. Stories about parents we missed, about dreams we buried, about fears we never said out loud before. Some nights I caught her staring out the window, tears on her cheeks. I never pushed. I just sat nearby, letting her know she wasn't alone. We weren't in love, but something was growing. Something steady. And neither of us knew yet how much the world would try to tear it apart. Living together felt strange at first. Like we were both guests in the same house, we moved carefully around each other, polite in a way that kept distance. Emma woke up early every morning, quiet as a shadow, and spent hours in the garden. She learned the soil fast. Her hands got rough, her shoulders grew steadier. I noticed little things. She always lined her shoes up by the door. She folded laundry the same way every time. At night, she washed the dishes slowly, like she was afraid of breaking something that could not be replaced. The town noticed, too. At the feed store, conversation stopped when I walked in. At the diner, people stared a second too long. Emma felt it worse than I did. She came home one afternoon pale and tight-lipped, carrying groceries like they weighed 100 pounds. "They think I trapped you," she said quietly, setting the bags down. "Like I planned this." I clenched my jaw. "You didn't." "I know," she said, "but they don't." We did not talk much that night. The house creaked around us. The wind pressed against the windows. I lay awake listening to footsteps move in the hall, then stop. A week later, the problems started showing up where it hurt most. The general store stopped buying my eggs. The feed supplier raised prices without warning. The bank sent a letter saying they were reviewing my loan. All things that made no sense on paper. I knew exactly who was behind it. Aunt Marjorie had never forgiven me for keeping the land. She had money, influence, and a smile that never reached her eyes, and now she had a story to sell. One evening, Emma sat at the table staring at the bank letter, her hands shaking. "This is my fault," she whispered. "If I leave, it will stop." I stood behind her chair and rested my hands on her shoulders. "No," I said firmly. "If you leave, they win." She turned to look at me, eyes full of fear. "I don't want to ruin your life." "You didn't," I said. "You walked into it." Same as me. That was the first night she cried in my arms. Not quietly, not politely. She broke down, sobbing like she had been holding it in for years. I held her and said nothing, because sometimes words only get in the way. After that, the distance between us shrank. We started eating breakfast together. Fixing things side by side, laughing at small mistakes. One night, while we were fixing a loose cabinet door, she smiled at me and said, "I don't feel invisible here." That mattered more than she knew. Then came the fire. It was late. The wind was high. I woke up to the smell of smoke and the sound of Emma screaming my name. The barn was burning. Flames climbed the wood fast, fed by dry hay and anger. We fought it together. Buckets. Blankets. Rain finally helped finish the job. When it was over, we stood in the mud, shaking, staring at what was left. "They won't stop," Emma said, her voice breaking. "They're trying to scare us." I looked at her face, streaked with soot and tears, and something settled deep in my chest. "We're done running," I said. "From now on, we fight." The storm came a few days later. Hard rain, wild wind. The river rose fast. Emma ran toward the chicken coop to save the birds. I chased after her. A piece of loose metal tore free from the barn roof and cut across my cheek. I went down hard. Pain exploded. Blood mixed with rain. Emma dropped to her knees beside me, screaming my name like the world was ending. In that moment, soaked, bleeding, surrounded by chaos, I knew the truth. This was no longer about duty, or a promise to her father, or two lonely people hiding from the world. I loved her. "If we don't make it," I shouted over the storm, "I need you to know something. I love you, Emma." She froze. Then she grabbed my face with shaking hands and kissed me, desperate and real, like it was the only thing holding her upright. "I love you too," she cried. I was just too scared to say it. We survived the storm. After that, everything changed. We started asking questions, talking to neighbors, gathering proof. Slowly, the truth came out. Bribes. Lies. A hired hand who admitted he was paid to start the fire. When the case went to court, Emma sat beside me, her hand steady in mine. Marjorie's power fell apart fast once the truth was exposed. The judge ruled in our favor. The farm stayed ours. The lies died in the open. Walking out of the courthouse, Emma squeezed my hand. "We did it," she said softly. "No," I replied. "We stood together." That night, we went home to the quiet farm. The same land, the same house. But it no longer felt empty. It felt like ours. After the court ruling, the town didn't change overnight, but it shifted. Small things at first. A nod from a neighbor who used to look away. A quiet apology from the feed store owner. Eggs selling again at the general store without excuses. Emma noticed it before I did. "They're watching us differently now," she said one morning as we walked back from the mailbox. "Not judging, measuring." "Let them," I replied. "We're still standing." Life slowed down after that, in the best way. The farm demanded steady work, and we gave it everything. Fences were rebuilt, the barn roof repaired, fields replanted where the flood had torn them apart. Emma found her place in it all. She started baking again, at first just for us. Bread that filled the house with warmth. Pies made from recipes scribbled in her mother's handwriting. One afternoon, she packed a few loaves and took them to the farmer's market in town. Nervous but determined, she came home with empty baskets and eyes shining. "They sold out," she said, breathless. "Every single one." From that day on, her confidence grew. People stopped seeing her as the woman who married too fast and started seeing her as Emma, the baker with kind eyes and steady hands. At night, we sat on the porch together, the sky stretching wide and endless above us. Sometimes we talked about nothing, sometimes about everything. One evening, she rested her head on my shoulder and said quietly, "I don't feel like I'm borrowing this life anymore." I kissed the top of her head. "You never were." Our marriage stopped feeling like a promise we were testing and started feeling like something real we were building. We shared a room now. Shared a bed. Not out of obligation, but because we wanted to. Some nights were soft and quiet. Others were filled with laughter, whispered fears, and hands holding on like anchors. One night, after a long day in the fields, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, unusually quiet. "Daniel," she said, her voice unsteady, "I'm scared to say this." I sat beside her. "Say it anyway." She took a breath. "What if this happiness doesn't last?" I thought about the storms, the fire, the blood, and the rain. Then I took her hands in mine. "Then we fight for it," I said. "Same as everything else." A few weeks later, she came to me with tears in her eyes again, but this time they were different. "I'm late," she whispered. I stared at her, my heart pounding. "Late?" She nodded, laughing and crying at the same time. "I think I'm pregnant." The world seemed to stop. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight, fear and joy crashing together inside me. "We'll figure it out," I said into her hair. "We always do." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Mornings were rough. Some days she barely ate. I learned to cook simple meals, burned more than I saved, and made peace with it. The town found out fast. This time, the reaction was different. Women from church brought casseroles. An older neighbor dropped off a crib he'd built years ago and never used. Even people who once whispered now smiled when Emma walked by. One afternoon, as we painted the small room that would become the nursery, Emma stepped back, hands on her hips. "I never imagined this," she said. "A home, a child, a life that didn't feel temporary." I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Neither did I. As her belly grew, so did our understanding of each other. We argued sometimes, usually about small things, but never walked away. We learned how to listen, how to forgive fast. One night, during a quiet thunderstorm, Emma traced the scar on my cheek. "That night," she said softly, "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," I replied. She looked at me with certainty. "I never will." The baby came in the heat of summer. The hospital was small, the room plain. But when I held our daughter for the first time, nothing else mattered. She was tiny, loud, perfect. Emma looked at me through tears. "We did this." "No," I said, smiling through my own. "We survived to get here." We named her Abigail. Bringing her home changed everything again. Sleep disappeared. Time blurred. But the farm felt alive in a way it never had before. Some evenings I stood under the old oak tree, watching Emma rock Abigail on the porch swing, the wind carrying soft laughter across the fields. That tree used to feel like the loneliest place on the farm. Now it felt like the center of our world. And I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever came next, we would face it together. Life didn't suddenly become easy after Abigail arrived. It became fuller, louder, and more fragile in ways I hadn't known before. Nights were broken into pieces. Emma would sit up in bed, rocking Abigail while I warmed bottles or paced the floor. whispering nonsense, until our daughter finally drifted back to sleep. Some mornings we both looked exhausted, hair a mess, clothes wrinkled, but there was always that look we shared. The quiet agreement that this was worth it. The farm adjusted around her. I built a small cradle on the porch so Emma could watch the fields while Abigail slept. I nailed extra boards along the fence line so the wind wouldn't cut through as hard. Emma learned how to bake with one hand, Abigail tucked against her chest in a sling, the kitchen smelling like bread and cinnamon. People kept showing up. Not to judge this time, but to help. A neighbor fixed the broken gate without asking. Someone left a sack of feed by the barn with a note that just said, "Welcome to the family." Even the town felt different now, less sharp, more human. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains gold, Emma sat beside me on the porch steps. Abigail slept between us, wrapped in a soft blanket. "Do you ever think about that day?" Emma asked quietly. "When I showed up here?" "All the time," I said. She smiled, but there was something thoughtful in her eyes. "I thought I was asking for shelter. I didn't realize I was asking for a life." I took her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. "I thought I was saving the farm," I replied. "Turns out, you saved me too." That fall, the bench under the oak tree was finished. We sat there often, watching Abigail grow stronger, more curious, her tiny fingers grabbing at leaves and sunlight. One afternoon, Emma looked at me and said, "My dad would have liked this." I nodded. Mine too. The scars stayed, the one on my cheek. The quiet ache of parents we'd lost, the memory of how close everything came to falling apart. But they no longer defined us. We had built something stronger than fear, stronger than gossip, stronger than loneliness. On the first anniversary of our wedding, Emma surprised me. No church, no guests, just the three of us under the oak tree. She took my hands and said, "We didn't marry for love that day, we married for survival, but somewhere along the way, love caught up." I swallowed hard. It did more than catch up. She laughed softly. "I choose you, Daniel, not because I need saving, but because I want this life. With you." I pulled her close, Abigail squirming between us, and kissed her forehead. "Then stay here," I whispered, "with me. Always." As the wind moved through the grass and the sky stretched wide and endless above us, I finally understood what my father meant all those years ago. Family isn't what you inherit, it's what you protect. And under that Nebraska sky, with the woman who stayed and the child we built a future for, I knew I would never be alone again.